Well, welcome. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We're super excited to have you here. I'm delighted to have with us Kendra Prospero. She is the founder and CEO of Turning the Corner HR. And when I met Kendra, I knew we just had so many shared passions that it would be fantastic to have this conversation today to talk about work and when work works and when it does not. So, Kendra, I'd love to just kick this off by giving you an opportunity to share a little bit more about your business and just kind of how you got here today.
That sounds great. Do we want to hit the record? You want me to do it?
Oh, I think we are recording.
Okay, fantastic. Great. Well, I'm super excited to be here, Jennifer. I really appreciate being able to join you. And I am, as you and I both agreed when we met, we're extremely passionate about this topic, and really it's become my life work. I really want everyone to love their job. And I can't really put my finger on why this has really become the thing that is so important to me, except that I do know that this has been something I've been passionate about and curious about since I was a little kid. I've just always loved hearing about the work people do, why they do it, how they got into it, what they like about it, what they don't like about it. And so for my entire life, I have been building this database of what makes someone love or hate a job. And so in 2011, I opened up my business to really serve the majority of the country who's running businesses, which is the small business, medium-sized business community who doesn't often have access to high quality support to help them figure out how to solve these people problems and how to make sure people do love their job. And so for the last 15 years, Turning the Corner HR and my team, we have been helping as many companies as we can end suffering in the workplace.
I love that mission of ending suffering, and we share sort of the same background. I've equally been fascinated about how work happens, how all the things that are needed for our world to exist, how that comes into being, and we spend the majority of our waking hours at work, but we don't put enough time into ending that suffering or making sure we have opportunities to really thrive where work is something that fuels us and strengthens us and becomes something that we're proud of. So, in your work, you mentioned 2011. That's gosh, 15 years. I know I was with the Corvirtus since 2013, and then acquired the company in 2019. And just the fact that that's been like going on 13 years now is mind-boggling. But if we go back to the past 15 years, when you do that important work of connecting hands-on with small businesses, small medium-sized businesses, what do you see the most that's breaking down in the workforce and in organizations right now?
Well, I see it very much as a symbiotic relationship between the employee and the employer. So both sides share in the responsibility of making work better. On the company side, what I see really breaking down is that, especially in small businesses and medium-sized businesses, is that the leaders don't get really clear around what they really expect from their employees. What are the behaviors that they want to see their employees demonstrate? And oftentimes these get sort of, I think, muddled by this idea of having a values-based company. Values are, I'm all in on values. It's just where it gets muddled is that sometimes a value will look really pretty or nice on a wall, but it doesn't necessarily represent the behaviors, or even worse, the CEO or the leadership team can't model what the thing is on the wall because maybe they don't 100% align with it, or maybe it isn't actually even clear what it means. So for example, a really well-meaning, well-intended value would be integrity. Well, how do you model integrity? How do you model that on a day-to-day basis? There are a bazillion ways to model integrity. And if you're not really clear on exactly what those behaviors are, it can just start to be like, it's just not get totally lived. And so
Mm-hmm.
I like to actually take like a value like integrity and really drill it down to like, what is that actual behavior that you will see? How does it then impact customers? How does it impact how you hire and fire and all of the things in between? And if there's not really clear definition there, then it probably isn't a real value that people can live. And so that would be the first thing I see breaking down on the side of employers. But then the second thing is then systematizing those values through the process. And so, how do you hire, fire, manage, govern, train, compensate, promote, all those various pieces that you do with employees so that those values are then lived on a day-to-day basis and it really becomes a big part of the culture of the company. Aside from that as well, then I would say now turning it back onto the employee side, where employees kind of miss out is then also not really asking that question to themselves of what do I really need from a job to
Mhm.
be happy? And does that then, am I going to get served? It was my lifestyle of what I need out of a job to be happy, going to be then served by the company and the job that I'm going after, including do I have the ability to really do this well? Like, is this a big part of who I am? Which is, I think, the great work that you guys do is help people really figure out what their hard wiring or their natural wiring is. And then how does it then align with the role that the company is looking to fill? So that's where some of the misalignment I think is coming, is that companies aren't super intentional about what they're really looking for, and then sometimes employees are not even really sure what they bring to the table and what they need.
Right. Yeah. And I think that stems from just we don't have a lot of space growing up and then through our adult lives to have those contemplative discussions with ourselves of what we need and what we want and to think about that. Even as we're launching our careers and deciding what to go into, there's not enough focus on really thinking about who we are and how we're going to pivot and adjust. Because as we'll talk about, I think as we dig into the lifestyle piece a little bit more, our lives change, we discover things, and how do we realize that and move into new ideas and new things as we grow. And I
Yeah.
also loved what you said about the values piece. Values are so important. They're what we're striving to achieve. But if we don't crystallize those in terms of behaviors and shared expectations and understanding and really make that clear, then what integrity means to me isn't necessarily going to be applied in the same way, or compassion, caring, understanding, whatever the case may be. So
Mhm.
excellent. So we talked about values and why work works. And what do you think are some of the biggest misunderstandings of what it takes to have work in our current workforce?
Well, again, this is symbiotic share, I would say. But I think the number one thing that employers can do to make work better is such a simple thing, and there's so few of them doing them, especially in the small business and medium-sized business arena, which is train your managers on how to be a manager. And so oftentimes in a smaller business, you've got this incredible employee that you don't want to lose. They've kind of reached this maybe plateau in their career where now suddenly there's not a lot more upward movement that they can get inside the company that's going to be, maybe in their exact field. And so we do make this decision as a well-intended manager or leader of our company, and we promote them into management. And now suddenly this employee who's been really good at doing one thing is now got to do a whole brand new skill that has probably nothing to do with what they did before, other than maybe the mentorship that could be provided to employees. But being a manager is a skill, and so few people are brought into a role knowing how to do that. And it is an epidemic, and it is so easy to solve it by just sending people who've been promoted into management into some kind of a training program to teach them what style of management do you use when and why? How do you then have a dignified conversation if someone starts to get a little bit off track with what you need them to do? How do you onboard them? How do you hire them? How do you set a goal that is realistic, that ties with the broader needs that the organization needs? How do you manage emotions at work? And what do you do when your employee shows up fired up, apathetic, whatever the emotion might be? Those are all skills. And so few managers, or so few managers right now, especially in small business, are trained on how to do all that. And I've seen it over and over because we train managers, so I have direct evidence on all this. It is transformational in terms of what will happen when you've truly got a manager and who knows what they're doing. And so that's one area for sure. I could go on and on about
Yeah.
multiple areas.
Well, I think that's probably a great area to start if we had to choose just one, and we know that everyone's struggling with resources and time, to start with leadership and those capabilities that we have to strengthen and develop for the first time when we go into a management role. It's often overlooked. What are some of the ways that you make that less daunting? So if I'm a CEO and I'm wanting to implement like new leader training, how do I do that? Because there's so much that we could learn.
Well, I think there's a kind of grandiose approach to take to it, and there's also just a chipping away at it approach. And
Mm-hmm.
I just think that doing anything is better than doing nothing. So I'm kind of the fan of the chipping away approach, which is to just start with any kind of training that gets your managers those skills I mentioned earlier, but especially the skills around communication. Um, I don't know about you, Jen, but I didn't really grow up in a family that like worked on communication on a daily basis. And so when I came into in my adult life and had conflict with like a colleague or a disagreement
Mm-hmm.
with a boss, I didn't have the tools in my toolbox to handle those conversations very well. So as I was managing my own career, I often felt maybe a little bit like a doormat. You know, I didn't say what I really wanted or needed. Or I would get really fired up about something because I was really passionate about it and probably could have said things in a better way that would have been more effective. All of those things would be ideal to be learned in childhood, but most of us just don't get those skills. And so any kind of communication skills is going to be helpful for the majority of your employees and your managers. Because again, I don't think my childhood is that much different from the average childhood. I mean, most people spend more time thinking about their grocery list than they do planning for a difficult conversation, right? And
I like
so,
that analogy.
and so, and that's one of the core tenets of how of going into a difficult conversation is just plan a little bit. Like, what do you want to have the outcome be? What do you think is going to go wrong? Like just like you would with your grocery list. And so, what do you need to buy and do you have enough money? It would be this kind of equivalent to that analogy. And so that would be like the first place that they could start. Um, there's
Mhm.
a lot of great training out there on the market that can also be way over the top for what I think a small business needs. And so that's why I'm also a big fan of the just sort of chip away at it, as opposed to
Mhm.
going for a full, $200,000 program that you just feels overwhelming and too expensive. There's lots of programs that are a fraction of that that I think would be, really helpful
Mhm.
for anyone who's in management and hasn't been trained.
Yeah, so maybe what we sometimes do is try to identify the strengths and some of the key areas of opportunity. So the difficult conversations that probably comes up pretty universally. Or how do I support newer people? How do I get newer managers to support new employees when they're going on their journey and getting things started? Um, And what about if someone was, let's say, struggling? We had just a question come in that is really relevant here. What if you had a manager where you're trying to get them to the point to take action, rather than just do that planning and talking? Maybe they're communicating a lot, but they're not taking action. Um, have you encountered that?
Yeah, for sure. So I think so a new manager is going to always have some hesitancy in
Mm-hmm.
making decisions or maybe being the enforcer on something like just imagine yourself as a new manager, right? Of course, you're going to be sort of timid in the way that you might respond to things because you're still not sure if what you're saying or doing is correct. So the best thing that you can do if you have a manager's acting like that is mentor them. Give them the advice. Walk them through what you expect them to say. Even role play it. I mean, I get grown-ups
Yeah.
don't love to pretend. I don't like to pretend at all unless I'm playing Barbie with my kiddos for like 5 minutes. So, but I mean, grown-ups just don't really love role playing, but it's a great way for the manager of the manager to model what's really expected and to be able to
Mm-hmm.
say, okay, let's plan what our desired outcome is. The desired outcome is we need to have this person take action. Okay, well, what is the action you want them to take? Well, we want them to complete this report by Friday. Okay, do they have the tools in place for completing that report? Yes. Okay, great. So that would be like the kind of thing that the manager would need to mentor the new manager on until they get their confidence built up in such a way and their ability built up that they can be more, they won't need that guidance. But I
Right.
think it's such a fallacy in anyone who is in a new role, whether you're a new employee or you've been promoted into management, whatever the new role is, to think that you can just throw someone into the deep end of the pool and be like, good luck with that. Like it doesn't
Hmm.
work. And especially with new managers. So we have a model we teach in our management training class called confidence management that really teaches the manager how to kind of think through what the employee needs to know, or what, in this case, what the
Hmm.
manager needs to know to be a successful manager. And it really starts with like, nobody knows how to do this job when fresh out of the, fresh, into the role. They have low confidence and low ability. And so that's at that point where let's take the example from the question, the manager needs to be guiding the new manager, saying like, this is how we do it here. I'm going to show you how I do it. I want you to watch me do this. You're going to sit here and we're going to
Hmm.
do this employee one-on-one together, like 100% micromanaging, which has got a bad rap, right? It would a well-deserved bad rap, but there's a time and place for micromanaging, and it's at the beginning of a new role. And then what will happen is then suddenly that manager, the new manager, is going to be like, okay, I got this. They're going to have a higher sense of confidence, not recognizing that they have not heard it all yet. Like none of us have heard it all who've been in a management role, but we want to then have that current manager, the new the
Hmm.
manager of the manager, be able to say, no, we got a lot more we still got to learn. So I'm still here for you. Let's plan some of these things out. Let's talk about what we do during these periods of time. And then they'll get to a place where the new manager is going to actually kind of lose it. They're going to lose their confidence. But their ability is high because they've been getting trained, they've been going through the steps with their boss. And so now that boss needs to be like, oh, I gotta give them more coaching. I believe in you. I feel like you handled that conversation really well. I feel like you did a really good job assessing your employees, like whatever it might be. Get their confidence up, get them to believe in themselves. So then you can get the manager to a place where they're making great decisions, they're driving what needs to get driven, and now
Hmm.
the boss doesn't have to be as hands-on with every day to day.
Right. So strategically deploying our resources and being hands-on in those early phases when we need to be to focus both on the capability as well as the confidence during that key
Yes,
period. Yeah.
exactly.
Um, just also in that idea of kind of chipping away at it, something that we've done is just cohort based. So getting a bunch of new managers together, giving them some knowledge. They get to brainstorm, often do some role plays of conversations or go into different groups of areas that they want to focus on and are struggling with, and then come back later and get some key knowledge from a leader, from a coach, all together. So it kind of, again, makes the most of resources and set goals again. And then they're accountable for that, if it's 4 weeks between the sessions, to be able to execute on what they talked about and then come back with feedback and cycle and repeat and have
Hmm.
that togetherness as well with the group of whether it's new managers or people at a certain stage or role to
That's
keep
great.
growing.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a similar program. It's just very skills based. It sounds
Mm-hmm.
like yours is very much also community based, which is great. And so, but yeah, that's the homework. The best homework you can get in a training program is on the job experiences to say, okay, go test out this new skill you just learned, see how it
Mm-hmm.
went, then come back and let's talk through it.
Yes, exactly. And then just, the whole idea of goal setting or being able to think about like, how do I want to feel 6 months from now? And then what are some things that I can do and be able to share with others, some things we can do to make that vision come to life.
Mhm.
So we started with leadership, which is a great for many reasons. But one of the three areas we wanted to focus on was in our conversation, just how do we align people with the work that they are built to do that's going to help them thrive and help the business as well grow. So let's start with results and what we see. What does it look like when someone's really connected to the work that they are doing? What are some of the dividends that we can expect if we have that connection?
Well, I think the employees that are engaged and fired up and just excited about showing up every morning, whether that's over Zoom or over in their own personal office or in an office environment, they're excited, they're just engaged. And when you poll a manager, those are our favorite employees, are the engaged employees. And part of why they're engaged, in my opinion, is that they have this intersection of the work that they're doing is aligned with their why. Why do they work? What are they getting from the job? As well as then that lifestyle fit, which we briefly touched on at the beginning. But then the third pillar of it is that they're naturally wired to do the work. And the natural wiring is this, and that, I mean, Jen, I've worked now with, like you, thousands of people. And I have never met someone that I didn't believe in once I got to know them. Like,
Mhm.
I know for a fact everyone on this webinar, and I don't even know who they are, everyone on this webinar has a gift to give this world. 100% know that. And so, but what their gift is something really, it is really unique. It's usually a combination of a whole bunch of things that they really enjoy, they're good at, they think about, they're fired up about, whatever it might be. The combination of those things is what makes their gift unique. And I think your assessment is a great example of one that helps people see their unique strengths and their unique gifts. And then what, a good manager will do is then translate that actually into a role. And so, what is a role? It gets to take advantage of a lot of those unique gifts. And that's the power of a really good manager or a mentor is someone who has enough of an understanding of a lot of jobs that they don't just like pigeonhole someone in, oh, you have a degree in software engineering, so you should be a software engineer.
Mhm.
No, right? I'm pointing to myself because that's my background. For those of you who are listening and not watching, I am a software engineer by education and then by the first 14 years of my career. Totally not wired to do that work at all. I mean, I am not wired to sit by myself in an office 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week and code. I am wired for this, for connection, community involvement, supporting people. That's my natural wiring, right? And so a good boss would be able to see, oh, yeah, not just a good degree, but actually someone who can translate customer requirements, for example, into a technical solution, which was like a career path I had. And so that's part of it, I think, though, can come from an assessment like the assessments that you folks have.
I'm just curious, what strengths about yourself that led you to that software developer career?
Well, it's a jagged path, but I spent my childhood as a in music doing well anything I could do to perform, really. But I
Mm-hmm.
ended up being a classically trained pianist and had a lot of music in my background. And so when I got into college, I quickly figured out through a lot of actually happenstance things, but that I really didn't want to do music for my whole life. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to be poor. That was the lifestyle fit that wasn't there for me. And I also really wasn't that talented. I wasn't that great of a musician.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to really wrestle with like, do I really want to throw myself into this and do this to make it work? Well, I didn't. And so computers were actually a really good next step because it's music is very logical, especially the training I had at classically trained. Like there's always a pattern almost you can figure out
Right.
in a piece of music, especially my favorite was Mozart, and he's very pattern based. And so going into computers was really easy for me, but it was easy because it was like 4 hours a week, right? It was like 4 hours a week. I was having to sit in the lab coding, and I'm like surrounded by my friends, and we're doing group activities, and so it was a piece of cake for me for that from that angle. But when I got into the actual job of doing it, no,
Mm-hmm.
not a good fit for me at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the reason I asked that is because I guess that there was some strength in you that led you down that path, and that as people in the workforce, if we have strong connections with others, if we're in this thriving workplace, then we can have others that see, okay, she has this strength in understanding patterns and logic and knowing this is a trend and we need to go down this path, but there's all these other strengths she has and other things going on. And so that's a one way through developing connections, being aware, all the good practices of leadership that we were talking about, that we can see, okay, this is working, it's okay, but we could be so much better with Kendra over here
Mhm.
in this other role.
And luckily, I did have a really good boss who did see all that in me, and he moved me pretty fast out of just being a software engineer on my own and moved me
Mm-hmm.
into a role where I was interfacing more with customers and got to it was slow. It wasn't ever in your early part of your career never goes at the pace that you think it's going to go at, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so or very few of us have that. But so it felt slow to me, but at the end of the experience, it was actually fantastic the way it all went. So, yeah.
And just one of those examples of the impact that strong leadership can have, and connecting leadership when we know our teams and
Yeah.
are focused on growing the business and growing people as well.
Hmm.
So where do we go wrong, whether that's accidentally or on purpose with maybe the best intentions, with losing this connection? How do we lose that connection between getting people in jobs where they're really meant to be, from both sides, the employer as well as us in careers?
Well, yeah. So I think on the employer side, I mean, we have work that needs to get done. And so I think we lose touch with it as bosses because there's a lot of pressure to meet the goals, whether that's
Mm-hmm.
to bring in more revenue, have more profitability, roll out a product that's going to make a big impact, whatever the reason is. We ultimately we do need people who just do the work and do the work with enthusiasm. And so I'm not negating that that's the ultimate goal really of why we all work, right? Is to get this stuff
Mm-hmm.
done to make money. Um, and I think what's been missed along the way on the employer side is just also recognizing that investing in your managers and investing to make sure the managers have a little bit more resources to work with the employees they've got can benefit everyone. And so instead of it being just, just get this thing done, giving managers time to manage, to get to know their employees, to understand the
Mm-hmm.
nuances
Mm-hmm.
is an overlooked part of what used to happen in companies. Like there used to be a management job, and then that management job started to be counted by the finance and accounting people as a pure cost center. And so they kind of eliminated management as a role and turned it into a working manager role where all managers now are working managers where they're also delivering projects. I get that that needs to be a thing, but in my experience, the companies that are the most effective, that actually have the highest profitability, are the
Mm-hmm.
ones that focus on managing. And they actually let managers have more time to be good managers. So that would be one thing on the employer side. But on the employee side, I think it's also learning to really getting clear on what is it that you need from a job to be happy, and are you going to get that from your employer? And if not, can you advocate for it, or do you actually need to go and find another job?
Mm-hmm.
Or can you live with it? Can you live with what you're not getting and still be an engaged worker? Because I don't think it's a good thing to go to a job and just be like, it is what it is. I really work, I'm going to show up for work, but I'm going to just work a couple hours today because I don't really like this job. Like,
Mm-hmm.
don't do that because that starts to erode your dignity. And work, you get a lot of dignity as a grown up by being a good worker and by enjoying the work that you do. So
Yes.
don't let yourself get to that place where you don't care about the work you're doing because it's not good for your confidence and it's not good for you being a grown up. So get a handle on what you're good at, what you need from the
Mm-hmm.
job, and why you work so that when you do show up for work, you're giving it your all and you can feel that you are giving your gift to this world.
Mm-hmm. We started our conversation talking about first time managers and leaders. And now you brought up something interesting of leaders that lead leaders or lead managers, and sort of the complexity there, because they aren't hands on as much often with the team that they're directing through that leader. So, how do they make sure and balance that productivity piece of, I need X widgets done, I need to drive results in this direction, with also that core piece, that heart that we often sacrifice, of there needs to be connection with others, and the importance of understanding understanding people and who they are and how they're feeling and where their strengths are and where they can grow in the future and who may need to transition to another role or would be better in another role. Just all the complexity there when you're leading a leader that leads a team that you don't know as intimately. Have you sort of found any magic tricks there for striking that balance between productivity and relationships and leading leaders?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's yes, absolutely. And I think it's very much an underutilized resource, which is just bear with me for those of you that are listening, because I'm going to say something that I know you're going to roll your eyes. But the underutilized resource is human resource. Human resources. Human resources, when it's an actual strategic partner side by side on the executive leadership team, what the human resources does is creates the shortcut so that managers are more effective. So what makes a manager effective is this. They're trained. We already talked about that. And the second thing is that they're equipped. They're equipped to do what they need to do for their employees. That infrastructure and what makes a manager equipped is put in place by good HR. Now, I get that you don't love human resources. I get that it's kind of the pariah of some organizations, but it shouldn't be. It's actually your strategic advantage if you get the right HR in the room and you listen to them and you give them budget. You will see your organization catapult. Because I know that leaders that systematize hiring, training, and managing well, they catapult their companies. It's just rarely is it systematized. Who systematizes it? It's human resources. And that's the shortcut to getting that middle management layer more effective. They
Mm-hmm.
also, though, do need to be aligned with the vision and the values, and the, as we talked about earlier, as well as in such a way that can be modeled, right? Like again, coming back around to like this behavior has to be modeled by the CEO, by the C-suite, by the middle management team, and everyone who's in a leadership role. But if you think about it, it's really easy to remember what you got to do. Train, equip, align, and model. TEAM. Team. Team with your managers. Just do it.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So once we have the buy-in that everything we do hinges on people and the importance of that people experience and the strengths of the team, developing the team, we can think about HR more in a way of systematizing it. This is core to who we are, core to our future, our culture. More and more people are understanding the importance of culture. And so, how do we bring that to life consistently? We can't all do it on our own individually and be connected. So, we need HR to be the systematizers, just like we have for finance and accounting systems and processes, operations. When we talk with we work with restaurants and service oriented industries, healthcare. We talk about like you have systems and operations for things that are critical. You have a recipe for how you create a dish, and so if we're hiring someone, developing someone, having set steps and ways of evaluating and testing things is similar to just how you might ensure consistent execution in a kitchen or in some other service practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, matter of fact, I'll give your listeners a pretty phenomenal number because we've got now enough data for my own company. Because, by the way, about half my revenue comes from recruiting. So I have a really good like database now of numbers around hiring, even though we don't have like a huge team that we could just draw from for hiring ourselves. Even though I do
Mm-hmm.
hire for my team too, it's just the numbers are not as
Right.
big. And so our numbers when you systematize, for example, a hiring process, you get an outcome that is 97% of the time the outcome you want, which
Mm-hmm.
is a phenomenal number when you think
Right.
about dealing with people. You'll never have the assembly line of like what it would take to maybe make a great dish or produce, a complicated computer or whatever, because we're dealing with people and people are complex and there are always going to be a couple things that sort of get thrown into the pot that were unexpected, right? But that's where the 3% is. But 97% of the hires we've made have turned out because our process is just systematized. It's super dialed in.
Right. Yeah. And we see similar things. We've did a brief study just looking at the amount of information and the accuracy of the information received when something is systematized and dialed in. And the difference, it's 2 times as much information that is accurate and helpful in making those overall decisions that usually end up being correct when you start with your values, competencies, key behaviors, what the job requires, and then use that for hiring or promotion.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
All right, so we've talked about the strengths piece and what can derail us, what can keep us on track, systematizing how we're going to get there. So now let's go to just the core of like our what makes us unique, our own values and goals that comes into play and is shown in our lifestyle and what we want our life to be like. Because a key part of work is that we put in our energy and you mentioned earlier not wanting to be poor going into your career decision. I similarly felt like I wanted to have at least the same quality of life in my chosen career that I had growing up, and so I was immediately making decisions on where I might land based on that. So lifestyle is key, but it can be difficult to talk about or might be something that's a blind spot when we're talking about hiring and recruiting. So why do you think that is?
Well, I think a lot of people don't think about it. Um, and I think it's also very dependent upon where you are in life as well. Like there's some things that I think will adapt and change over time. And then some that don't for sure. Like I do think deep down, the reason we work is pretty consistent over the years. And so, like for you, Jen, you realized early on that you wanted the lifestyle similar to what you had growing up. That might have become in its, in one form, one of the reasons for the work you do and why you do it. And the thing that gets you out of bed every day is knowing that the work you're doing is contributing to the lifestyle that you and your family experience. That's fantastic to know that. If you ask the average person why they work, why do you work? They can't really tell you very concretely. They might say, "Oh, I make money," so that why, right? So that you can provide stability for your family. Oh, or so that you can retire and live on a golf course. Great. I mean, there's all sorts of reasons we make money. Some people will come back and once they get this thought in their brain, which hopefully we're going to plant that seed with this today, but is they'll start to say, well, actually, I have a really deep passion inside of me that I want to make sure the world knows about and get it out to the world. Great. Or it might be, I am really, really specialized in my field. I know a ton about or I'm really passionate about this field, and I want to continue to learn more and more and more, and just, be a consultant and help people. And the more I know, the more I feel like I've bringing my gift to the world, right? And so, might be something like that. It might be really altruistic, like mine. Um, I realized when I was about 19 years old that I wanted to make a difference in people's lives. And I mean, not just like a small difference, but like a big difference. And I felt it so deep in my bones when I realized this. And I've always remembered that day and reflected back on that day. And honestly, when I was working, as a software engineer, I would have moments where I was like, I'm not making a difference here. Let's be real. Like my code is not so amazing. People are going home early at night or whatever, contrived thing I would come up with. And so, but now there is a high probability that I'm going to make a difference in someone's life every day.
Right.
And I actually made it into a little post-it note that I have sitting right over here next to me to remind me that why, kind of that reason we work is so good though to get your handle on, because days will be hard. There will be times that you just do not want to get out of bed. You are not feeling good about it. You screwed something up. You got fired. You got laid off, whatever. You still got to know your why deep in your heart so that it keeps you motivated to keep on going. So I think that's like the first part really of the lifestyle
Yeah.
fit is, are you getting your why fulfilled? Because if you're not, like you're just gonna feel weird. It just doesn't feel right.
Yeah, that's something we start with when we do employee development and leadership development is the why. So, what is the why of you being here right now in the role? And then even going into that deeper. So sometimes you have to ask, like you were saying, well, I'm here for a paycheck. Well, why? Why does that matter? And then maybe it's, taking care of kids or family, or, and then, well, besides the paycheck, what else is there? Because there's often facets. Like with me, quality of life was one, but definitely making a huge difference was another as well, and how I wanted to do that. And so just dialing in, asking yourself, our role is kind of around three times. Why is your why your why, to get to that connection that's so important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's great.
So if we're hiring with your recruiting practice, how do you tackle that lifestyle piece?
Well, for the recruiting side, like it's really important that we treat and understand both sides of the recruiting equation. So, when we kick off a recruiting engagement, the first thing we do is really go deep with the leader. Why do you need this role? Like, what is a perfect person going to do for you? What's a perfect personality for this role? Who do you love working with? Who do you not like working with? Um, who have you seen succeed in this role, not succeed? Like, we just really go deep with them before we get into anything around the skills. And I mean, the skills are usually the easiest part to find, honestly. It's that like essence, the personality essence. But then we also talk with the employer around like, why you? Why should they work for you? Like, what makes you a great place to work? And like that's becoming a big part of the work we do now is helping employers really turn the corner
Mm-hmm.
to be a better place to work. Like the common denominator of all the clients we work with are people who are more heart-led leaders, and they do want to do right by their people, but they don't always know like what needs to happen. So we can go in there and help fill in that gap for what needs to happen. But they've got to be clear on, why work here and then why this job. And then on the flip side, when we go into the recruiting process or the recruiting itself, as we're getting candidates that we're reaching out to and or they're applying or whatever mechanism they come through, we are then also looking at, so what do you need from a job to be happy? Is this employer going to give it to you? What do you love to do about this work? Is this employer going to give it to you? What do you see your career path be? We don't ask that question to every role because some people don't have a connection enough yet
Mm-hmm.
to their career. But if someone who's like mid-career, they kind of need to know like what's next? Like what do you want to learn here to continue to enhance your career? And so usually when we start to see those things all align, then we dive into like the skill. Well, tell me about your background. Like why did you get into this? What do
Mm-hmm.
what's your education, blah, 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 right? Prior experience. But once all those other pieces, those other layers are in place, the skill set, then we can determine like, do they have what they need? What, the employer needs? Is it trainable? Like that's then the kind of final piece of the recruiting.
Right. Yeah. So it sounds like you're doing a lot on both sides to get that connection initially. But we know that our lives pivot in unexpected ways, or our needs and our wants change with our lifestyle, um, likely more than our strengths. So, how do you support your leaders in responding to those changes, or even just being aware of those changes?
Yeah, I often will say what you need from a job to be happy is not something you want to tattoo on an arm. Because it will change and that will be painful. But because it does change over time. Like when I was newer, and we can all relate to this, right? When you're new into your career, you need more mentoring. You need probably educational support. You may need to have different experiences to really help you figure out what you're good at or not. I don't need any of that now. I don't need mentoring I mean, I always need some mentoring, but you know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Like not to the extent I did when I was younger. I definitely don't feel like I need any educational opportunities outside of just, wanting to continue to grow. But like it's shifted, it's definitely changed. And again, a manager needs to also understand that. And if I could be a little edgy right now, I mean, as edgy as I can get in HR, right? But I am not a fan of this whole like generational discussions that are happening a lot in the workforce. Yes, we are different when we are at different ages, but I hate the labels that are put on, boomers, Gen
Yeah,
Xers, millennials, Zoomers. I like to call them Zoomers, Gen Z, Gen Alpha. Like it's not actually about the title, it's about where they are in life. And if
exactly.
managers can start to manage to where people are in their life and that sort of what their expectations are around their careers at those different points in life, it would be a lot easier discussion than being like, well, I'm a millennial or I'm a Gen X, whatever. Right? Because like
Mhm.
when you're, so let's take the Zoomers. So they're, in their 20s, they're entering into the workforce. They don't know how to have a job. So we have to, as managers, teach them how to have a job. That means how you are responsible. Don't send an email to the CEO of IBM, which is what I did at 23 years old, to give him your feedback on his strategy. Not a good idea. Like those just norms of what you need to know
Mhm.
to have a job. Teach them about managing their career. Teach them about how you grow in a lattice or a ladder, however it goes.
Yeah.
But that's like what you do in your 20s. In your 30s, now you're starting to get established. You might be getting married, having babies, having a mortgage. Now you need stability. Now you need to understand your career path. How can I continue to grow? Now, how can I actually get that promotion? Different managing, right? Then you get someone who's in their, maybe mid 40s, early 50s. Now they've got the expertise. Now they are the sage person on the team, usually that really knows things inside and out. How do you start to transfer that knowledge now down to the incoming generations? Like it's just different managing. It's not a different person. There's not
Mhm.
kind of a label that was attached to them the year they were born. So
And
anyway.
you can even look at, in the 80s, what people were talking about around boomers and
Yes.
compare it to Gen Z and Alpha now and see the similarities that we were complaining about the same things then about the
Oh,
younger generation.
I found a quote from a contemporary of Homer that was complaining about the younger generations.
Mhm.
I think it's age old.
Yeah, it's an age old thing that we always think is something new and definitely needs to be addressed. Another facet is even just what they've encountered in their career too. So,
Mhm.
like a boomer that is in maybe a very tech oriented. Of course, everything is touched by technology, but in a tech discipline versus healthcare, they're all going to have their own stories and own journeys that they've been on across their career. Or someone who like the Gen Z that's encountering this AI transition and all of the things that come with that and the uncertainty, that's going to be different for Gen Z than a millennial that's been around a little bit more. So just there's all of these intersectionalities of what we've been through, who we are, our identity that come to the table, and we can get some information and strategy to go forward thinking about that as well.
Mhm.
Excellent. All right. So we have a little bit of time left. The last area that we wanted to cover, we talked about lifestyle, we talked about giving people work that complements their strengths. Now we want to go into purpose. So, really setting that groundwork for engagement, commitment, achieving the great things that we want to. So, purpose and vision, sometimes it could just be well worded wallpaper or something, unfortunately, in an organization. We've been focusing a lot on small, medium sized businesses. So lots of demands and maybe something that doesn't get the energy or the systems that it needs. So, how do we know when purpose is not just that, like wallpaper or statement on the wall?
I think it comes back around to what's modeled. So, everyone who's around a leader knows what they value. And because they're daily showing up and showing it. So just get real with it. I understand as a business owner myself, the allure that comes from having what I would say really inspirational values, something that again lives that wallpaper that looks great. I get it. I get that it's sexy or whatever you want to say. It just doesn't work. And so if I could just tell a quick story, I mean, we had a client that had the sexy values, had the thing that looked great. And when he talked, when he talked about it, he was so fired up about it. And he was actually quite an inspiring person. Like I got drawn in, and I don't really get drawn in by that stuff because I'm a little bit just, I just have been around the block a few times. Like I just tend to keep people like that a little bit at arm's length, knowing that there may be something else going on. And sure enough, as I dove in with him, I asked him about turnover, and he was like, "Oh, yeah, turnover's really high." And I was like, "Okay, well, you can't have these amazing values on the wall and then have high turnover. Like something isn't working." And so anyway, it turned out after we got in there and started poking around that what wasn't working is that he wasn't really around to model what he said on a daily basis. And that he had delegated the managing to this other person who was a full-on jerk and couldn't care at all about what was on the wall. Matter of fact, this guy just kind of was on a power trip, honestly. Like he would withhold information, he would demand things from people, he'd throw these like weird tantrums. Like he threw a tantrum within the first minute of meeting me. That's why I knew something was way off. And it's because there was this misalignment around like what one the leader said or the owner said, but he wasn't around to model it. And this other guy just sort of ran with what he thought was needed. And unfortunately, the owner was the one hiring people. So
Mm-hmm.
people were getting hired by him thinking they're going to come into this amazing experience, but then they're being managed by this other guy having a completely different experience. And that's why they were packing up their bag and leaving because they didn't sign up for that, right? They didn't sign up
Mm-hmm.
for what the culture ultimately ended up being. So I think the purpose comes back around to what is modeled by the leaders, which is why you just got to get real with it. Because if you can't get real with it and you can't model it on a day-to-day basis, people are just going to be like, I'm not really into this.
Mm-hmm.
And the
And so
purpose
really
gets lost.
what we see happening on a Tuesday afternoon more than what's in our vision statement, that's really the best indicator of if
Yeah.
something
Or
is
even Friday
happening.
afternoon, I would say.
Yeah, right, yes,
Yeah.
Friday might even be better.
Yeah.
So how can we get that clarity? Like we talked about systems earlier. How do we make that transition into having priorities, decisions made by the vision? Maybe by looking at the values to start and making sure that they're resonant, that there's a reasonable number of values.
Yeah, I mean, we do this work a lot with our clients. In fact, most of our clients right now, our engagements are around this, around really like getting with the leaders to say, what do you really expect?
Mm-hmm.
And then to go in deeper, like not just what do you expect, but like how do you know you have it? What does it look like? What's the experience of the customer? What's the experience of other employees? How's this, what happens in a year from now or in 5 years from now? Like, how do you really know you have it? And it's usually in that second question that the leaders start to kind of go, oh, well, maybe what I said first isn't really what I feel or what I really am expecting. And so then we go into even deeper. Well, if you have this, what does this actually do for you? Like, what does it do for you? What does it do for the business if you actually have this behavior being
Right.
demonstrated to your customers and to your fellow employees? Oh, well, what it does is it creates this da 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 da, whatever it might be. And then the final question is, and how does it make you feel? And if it isn't like a feeling like ease, wow, incredible, sleep at night, peaceful, like whatever, it's not a real value,
Mm-hmm.
honestly. And so, I mean, that's really the beginning of the activity we run. But then we also go to all the employees. Why do you work here? What do you think this company does really well? What do you think the leaders, really expect from you? What do you hear from your managers? Like we're going to gather all that data too. And then it's the aggregation of all that data for us to then come back to say, okay, here's what we discovered. It's not collaboration that you want. You actually want people to be innovating on a daily basis by having time to think about the customer problems. Well, you got to
Right.
get people in front of the customers then a little bit more to understand what they're dealing with. That's a terrible, a winging it example, but it's a recent one for one of our clients right now. So that's part of it. Is then, gotta probably have a facilitated conversation around what do you really expect? And then let's translate that then into a recruiting strategy, a hiring strategy. Let's
Exactly.
translate that then into day-to-day managing. Like, how are we going to reward the behavior? What are the limits? Like, what if somebody does not show up the way we want them to? At what point do we say, you are not living this value? We are no longer a fit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you let them go. So that's how you kind of then start to systematize the values too.
Right. We sometimes use the term promises or think about promises. So promises to the employees and promises from, and then can have some of those similar shared understanding of where we're headed and where the lines are for what's okay or what we're willing to work with and develop, and where things, okay, this is not a fit, or these are the things that are not absolutely not okay. And then getting to, if something's a promise, that also kind of gives it that level of importance to narrow things down to really what's most critical.
Yeah.
And a great way of just operationalizing
Mm-hmm.
that culture thing that can be
Mm-hmm.
kind of something that's hard to think about.
That's great. I like that. Yeah.
All right. So, what are some of the barriers that you see to really engaging people in the mission? It seems like you have a lot of work in that area. You're building out systems for how we build cultures. So, what are some of the barriers once you have those lists of values and behaviors? How do you make sure that that gets out there?
Well, the rollout of values in an organization that's already fairly established, there's a whole change management process that has to go in behind it for it to truly get adopted, because there's going to be already like a pre-existing culture that probably has people who may not be 100% aligned around the values that have now been defined more clearly. And so there is a little bit of a transition period for sure that we are really deliberate about rolling out in a slow way, getting
Mm-hmm.
the people internally who are really bought into it to really help sell it. And then honestly, there are some times that there is just a pure misalignment and there is some change to staff where people either are moved into a different role or maybe moved out of the organization because they truly are not aligned. And those ones are usually easy to peg up front too, because the leadership team will call them the employees that are like really talented but toxic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, they're toxic because they're not aligned with what your expectations are. And they're limping along with that by being really talented at what they do so they don't lose their job. But in reality, like it's just not a fit. So that's usually one of the first things that happens is that with slow rollout of the values, we start to see some shifts in the organization. Now, ideally, we get to this really early on in the growth of a company. So like we love working also with like a startup that's just gotten funding.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and by the way, usually are a second time founder, like it's the second time they've run a business and they're like, oh yeah, I didn't do it right the first time. I really want to do it right the second time. But then we can sit down with the founder and say, okay, what are the behaviors you really want as you start to grow your leadership team? Let's make sure they're 100% aligned behind you so that we don't have to go through the change management part. We just
Mm-hmm.
roll it out with the existence of the company. So, but
Excellent.
it's not often do we get, or it's not as frequent that we're getting called in with startups as it is with like well-established companies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we just had this question from the group. How can we go about developing someone out of the wrong role? So let's say they have that culture connection, but their strengths aren't aligned. How I imagine once we put into place some of the systems that we've been talking about, like performance reviews that are based on the behaviors that come from the values, we can start to see truly where people's performance is. But how do we develop someone out of the wrong role?
Yeah, compassionately. Um, I think my experience is then that if someone is not doing a great job in a role, it's because the work is too hard, the work is too boring, or life is too hard.
Mhm.
And as a manager, it's kind of identifying which one of those is it. And if the work is too hard, it's because they're not aligned with the skill. And so then we need to have them and work with them to say, well, what are you really, what do you feel like you're really great at? Help them go through that discovery process, like using one of your assessments, even. And then be able to have a compassionate conversation around, like, we really need someone who's really detail oriented, who's really good at
Mhm.
following a process. You're someone who's more creative. You're a little bit more somebody who's, a little bit more ad hoc. Those are great qualities, just not what we need in this role, for example. And so you will be happier if you were in a sales role, or you'd be happier if you were in a role that was more creative. Sometimes you can coach them out and help them understand it themselves and then
Mhm.
help them find the next thing. If that's not possible, though, which isn't always the case, then it is a matter of now compassionately letting them go. Like if they're not naturally wired to do the work, they're not going to just suddenly turn around and be able to do the work. Or you have to decide like how much are you willing to work with, to stay with them. If the work is too boring, though, that's the flip side, right? That's someone who's kind of burned out. They were probably once an expert and now they're just tired of it. So now it's a different discussion. Like, what do you want your legacy to be? Do you want to pass down your knowledge to someone else? Does that feel good to you? Because that would be amazing for all of us involved. And I think it would re-energize you for why you do this work. But then the last piece is if life is too hard, that's a tough one because I mean, there's a lot of things that make life really tough. As a matter of fact, anybody who's making less than $25 an hour in a role, you know, pretty much across the country, there is more month than there is money, and life is hard. And so it's just also then having the empathy and the compassion to understand that. So, so yeah, it's challenging when you've got someone who's in the wrong role. No doubt, it's challenging.
Right. However, with systematizing your culture and performance and all the things that we've been talking about, you can start to highlight these things and understand and be able to deploy that compassion to support everyone and support the business and grow.
Yeah.
Anything else, Kendra, on we've covered the purpose, we've covered the lifestyle, strengths. Anything else before we wrap up today?
I don't think so. This has been a great conversation, Jen. I really appreciate your question, your interviewing style and how you brought it all out. So I really hope that your listeners get some value from this.
Well, thank you for your time and sharing your gifts and your journey. This has been a wonderful conversation. I know I've learned and been energized by many things that you've said, and appreciate the opportunity to connect and also share a little bit about Corvirtus and what we do and our approach. So thank you everyone for joining us. It was an absolute pleasure, and look forward to next time.
Sounds great. Thanks so
All right.
much.
Thanks so much, everyone.